Hello, dear listener. I have something truly special to share. It's an exclusive invitation to join me in Mexico for an intimate and luxurious 3-day retreat along the beautiful Pacific coast of Zihuatanejo, taking place the weekend of the spring equinox, March 18th through the 20th. There's also an optional day to stay through the 21st for some special ceremonies that are happening in the area for the equinox. But the retreat itself is the 18th through the 20th, really an opportunity not to be missed. And I'm offering one lucky listener a discounted ticket on this weekend that I've just been loving into being actually for several years now as COVID and, everything. But when we conceived of building this place, our home down here, it's really what we envisioned, bringing people down here for retreats, for trainings, because we felt and we knew that this space was special. And as people keep coming down and we keep getting the feedback, how magical it is, we want to share it in a really intentional way. Be working with the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, the metaphors of the season. We'll set sight on a new vision for our mothering journey and creating a deeper connection to self and Mother Nature. So to win a discounted ticket, rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts. Screenshot it and DM it to me on Instagram at Dr. Gertrude Lyons. And remember, the most important thing to mother is yourself. Give yourself permission to take a retreat this year. And besides, who said mothers can't go on a spring break? I'll see you there.
This is a Soulfire production. Welcome to Mother. No, it's Mother. Welcome to Mother, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way you never have before, but have always needed. It's time we rewrite the Mother Code. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Mother, Rewriting the Mother Code with me, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. And I'm so excited, moved, inspired by this episode. I had the privilege of having a conversation with Anna Lovind. She's an author committed to empowering women to become creative doers. And she was calling in we were connecting. She lives in Sweden. She made a choice to move out of the city into the forests in Sweden. And we got to talk about that, but more so this concept of a creative doer and the feminine process that is. She left her life in a renowned publishing world in Sweden and made this intentional decision. But I loved our conversation because it underlined so many points that we've talked about on the show around, balancing the masculine and the feminine. And just in the work that she does in her book, Creative Doer, A Brave Woman's Guide from Dreaming to Doing, brings together. And she has a very grounded, solid approach and thoughts on balancing being and doing, creating and doing and raising women's awareness around this. So I loved our conversation, and, you're going to hear some things about her and what that is and that journey she's been on, but also how she's supporting other women. I've resonated with it so much. And I say at one point, I feel like the perfect podcast guest appears for me at just the right time in my life. I'm launching and just the beginning phases of writing a book. She had many things to say that were personally very helpful to me. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did, but also, take away for yourself, like, what does it mean to shift out of a masculine perspective of conquering our fear and overriding and, battling with it, to embracing, to being with, and taking small steps rather than feeling like we have to take huge leaps in our life. And, that's the win versus all the small steps and all the ways that as women we bring our creativity forward, or, even for men, encompassing and bringing in the feminine aspect to their doing. It's all so valuable and powerful. So can't wait to hear. I hope that you have the chance to listen through, and I would love to have your comments for me on Instagram at Dr. Gertrude Lyons, or feel free to go to my website and email me. Any way that you can let me know like what's resonating with you, I would love. And sign up for my newsletter, because I would hate for you to miss any of our episodes. I love building this community. So thanks so much. Well, good morning for me, but good afternoon for my guest, Anna Lovind, who I'm so excited to have on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to just say a few brief things about Anna, and then of course we want her to talk about herself, and we'll have all of the ways you can connect with her, because I'm sure you're going to want to, in the show notes, ways that you can find Anna and learn more about her. So Anna Lovind is a feminist author committed to empowering women to become creative doers. I love that. That's so cool. So she had a long career as an editor at a renowned publishing house, but made a very intentional decision to move into the forests of Sweden with her two daughters to begin her personal journey toward living a creatively fulfilling life. I love that. And now you're helping other women do that as well, right, Anna?
Yep, that's about it.
Well, I'm going to say a couple other cool things about you, because there's lots, but since 2015, Anna's led more than 700 students through what she calls, and we're going to hear more about, her Creative Doer process and community. She has an ebook, Creative Doer, A Brave Woman's Guide from Dreaming to Doing. She's been featured in publications from the Huffington Post to Positively Positive and many more, and on many, many really cool podcasts. And so I'm very grateful that she's on ours today. So again, thank you so much for being here. So Anna, I know I just said some particulars about you. If you wouldn't mind just going kind of right into you and, what you're doing, kind of what led you to anywhere you want to start, and kind of pick up on and focus on your journey a little bit.
Sure. Yes. This is always a tricky question, I think, because you could go all the way back,
I know.
because everything led here in a way.
Exactly.
But work-wise, how I ended up where I am today, I think it started right. You were touching on that. I was working in publishing and living in the city, and had that like shiny career going. And in a way, it was perfect, because I'm a writer myself. I love books. I love reading. I love that whole world. But there were aspects of it that just, there was an itch. Mm-hmm. There was a longing in me, and I couldn't somehow meet that in my current life situation. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't actually even quite sure what it was at that point. I just knew that I wanted to work in a different way. I also wanted to live in a different place, I guess. I didn't want to live in the city anymore. It was something calling me back, because I grew up in a rural area, and I sort of had that strong connection to nature, and that had always been super important for me. I think you can maintain some of that even if you're living in the city, but there was something in me that always longed to go home in that regard. And as for the work, I worked with writers, and got them through the whole process from manuscript to published book. But I started noticing as I was working with more and more people that, the process is pretty much the same, not regardless of who you are, but some of the process is always the same. And I talked to people in other creative disciplines and like noticed it seems to be the same there as well. The creative process seems to be similar. We go through similar stages of excitement and fear and procrastination and completion, and then the fallow phase, and then we go back into creation mode and so on. And I got curious about that part, not just, producing books, as fun as that was, but like that process that we go through, that magical thing where you have an idea or a vision and you somehow transform that into physical form or into something that is real in our...
That's great.
There was something about that drew me in. So I started exploring that. I started coaching or mentoring creatives. And eventually that led to me leaving the fancy career and also the city, moving back to where I live now, and moved my work online because that was really the only option if I wanted to live out here in the middle of nowhere. So it grew from there. And that was just the beginning, really. There have been so many different shifts along the way from there as well, because that's 10 years ago now.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I've become a mother again since then. And that changed a lot about my work. So much about it. Like becoming a mother helped me see. I think before that, I had a lot of focus on how we can shift as individuals to make our work more sustainable and enjoyable and to grow as creative people and so on. But becoming a mother, again, it was the second time. And it was, having two kids is quite different from having one. Yes. And it really sunk into me how society isn't really built by or for women or for the needs of women. And there is very little support available if you want to step outside of that role that is expected of you and encouraged, that where you are mother in the biological sense, and that is your priority, and the caregiving and caretaking is your priority. And if you want to be a woman in a different way, there is very little support available, and
I do know.
Yeah, I know, and our experiences and our needs. It's not just that society is built by and for men to a big degree, but it's also that our experiences, our stories, and our needs as women are made invisible in so many ways and in so many layers in society, and not just invisible, I think, but also irrelevant.
Yeah,
like it's something that could be dealt with, but it's not necessary. I think about like you're in America and in the US, and the way that your parenting politics is handled. To me, that's such a typical example. Like we're giving birth to the people who are about to, step into and be this nation and this country and do the work and all of that. But that work of birthing and bringing up those people, that is somehow completely overlooked. It's absolutely absurd. But that's such a typical example of that. Yeah. And I see that everywhere. And I see that as well in the field of creative work. And I started to look at that more. And that in turn birthed the Creative Doer. It's always been a focus on serving women creatives, particularly for those reasons.
I love that. And there's so many pieces of what you're saying, Anna, that I think we'll still touch on, but want to go into further. As you're bringing this up and you've made this big move from corporate to entrepreneur, and serving through coaching and that. Can you tell me a little bit more about the coaching you do and the counsel with women on their creative journey out of, what you're experiencing, what you're sharing here, and what does that look like?
Yes. I'm not actually trained as a coach, so I usually refer to myself as a mentor or teacher or anything like that. Sure. But I suppose it is coaching in a sense. What it is I have like a solid feminist perspective on this work. So the creative doer is, as the name might imply, it is a practical process of going from just dreaming and hoping and longing to do that thing that is calling you, to actually doing it and like helping you understand the path from there here to there. So there's definitely that. But then there's also this shift in perspective, I think, that is equally important, where we, put those glasses on, where we can see that all, being a woman or raised or socialized as a woman, that comes with certain consequences living in a patriarchal world. I touched upon them just now when I said that our experiences and our needs and so on are made irrelevant and invisible. And that is true even like if you look at the books we read, the films that are being made, the stories that are being told. If you read a history book, I mean, whose stories do you find in there? It's not our voices as women. And that is changing slowly, but that is still the case, very much so. Like if you go into a museum, whose art is on the walls? It's still overwhelmingly male voices and stories and experiences that we are taught to consider as universal, as normal. And we sort of compare ourselves to that, not always aware that we're comparing ourselves to something that is not even available to us. Like the path of a male creative will look differently, will look different from the path of a female creative, simply because of the society that we live in. And being aware of that is really important, because otherwise we are going to compare ourselves and we are going to make it our fault. We're going to make it a shortcoming on our part that we can't do that. Like all these, I mean, there are so many examples, but this whole idea that creative work is done in solitude, you disappear into a cottage in the woods, like for 6 months, and then you emerge with a novel. And who can do that if you have kids, for instance, right, or caretaking responsibilities? That's not a path that is available to you. And to see that and to understand, okay, so if that story, if that sort of the image and ideal that we have of a creative person, if that is sort of modeled on a male and that is not relevant for me, okay, what is? Like what would be a better way to approach this for me? And not because I necessarily think that there is this essential difference between men and women. I don't even know if that's the case. I'm not sure that it is, but that doesn't matter. Just the fact that we are men and women, we are divided in that way, and we live in a society where that means very different things. For that reason alone, you need to sort of become aware of it so that we can create a path that is possible for us. So if we can't have these like big stretches of time because we have kids at home, maybe we have to learn to create in 15-minute spurts instead, and build from there.
Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat. Getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies, I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if the idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I'm sorry, because I was excited about a couple of things that you were saying, and I don't even know if I can go back there. You're bringing up, I think, such important points about, how I'm going to say it, kind of from my framework of, as women, because we're in a culture, a patriarchal culture, we think we're supposed to produce, do, like a man in a masculine way. And I'm going to maybe refer to it more as masculine, feminine qualities and, some differences in that way, because I really believe, both are important and powerful. It's not one better than the other. It's just we're out of balance. And I think you're, bringing up such an important aspect of that, which is how do we, if we're looking at the models and the models are out there are all from this masculine framework, and I'm trying to live up to that, I'll never meet it. I'll never meet that because I'm not supposed to. Right. And I'm trying to be something I'm not, or do something in a way that's not maybe as natural or as kind of as natural as wired in. So what I'm hearing you say is, just even from the practical standpoint of, for me to really be in my creative process, it's not going to look like the going off to in the woods and having a big chunk of time, because as women, we're always mothering more than one thing. Right. And if I'm going to be conceiving and creating a book, for example, then, I'm not going to be doing that in solitude alone. Other things are going to be going on in my life. And not to say someone can't set that up in some way, but particularly not if you already have children, unless you're going to send them away for 6 months, which, right. There's lots of options. We're not really talking about those options. It's okay to do it differently. I think where I was particularly resonating with is it's that awareness. And that's something I, work with women in rewriting the mother code is raising our awareness. Like, oh, you're not going to mother anything in your life and your children or a book from a masculine perspective. And it's not an assembly line. It's not a finish a product, build a child, build them to your liking. It's just not that. So, but we need to become aware of that. And then we have choices. And I think, that's what you're really bringing to light is without that awareness, and I don't have the choice to do it differently because I was just driving myself crazy trying to do it some other way. Yeah. So I think that's really beautiful. And I wanted to hear, because I know there's a way you help and support women to bring that out and raise their awareness. And as part of that, because I think there's something that you do that's really beautiful, which is really highlight the unique nuances in a woman and her creative process. And that's kind of what we're talking about. But I'd love to have you say a bit more about that. And it's kind of related to the power women have in their creativity that's different,
yes,
but not as highlighted. So yeah, if you keep expounding on that.
Yes. And this is, we are so inherently creative And sometimes that is expressed as actually creating life in our bodies and giving birth to it. That is like the utmost creative act, I think. And that process, like we were touching on before, that can be translated into so many different things. Birthing a book, nourishing your work in the world in different ways, so that it sort of, that mothering reaches out and our embrace sort of is made available in
Sure.
so many different ways. And that, I think that's also part of the recognition, where creative work is seen sort of as either professional or that fiddling that we do in the home sphere, so to speak, like when we, which is the sphere that has historically been the only one available for women, and we've expressed creativity in that sphere, like creating a beautiful home, bringing up children, or mothering in different ways, creating food, creating nourishment, and all those things. And that is not fully recognized as creative work because it's not professionalized, and we've sort of made a division there, which I think is part of the patriarchal and also capitalist conditioning. Like we separate those two things, and only if you make money from your work is it worthy, being recognized as real creative work or real artistry and so on. So I think there too, we need to start with that recognition. And then from there, we can sort of, when we recognize all the ways that we are already creative in the 1,000 small ways, like that we live our lives and create our homes and be with the people in our lives and so on, then it's so much easier to take the next step into a more focused creative endeavor. Then when we don't feel like, okay, here I am, and then over there is the creative life and how you're supposed to do that. And there's this huge gap between, sort of trying to narrow that gap and point to the fact that, no, we're already creative. All of us, we're already doing that work. And now we just need to, if you're going to write a book, for instance, you just need to sort of focus that energy and that capacity towards this one project, and find the space and the time necessary, even if it's in 15-minute bursts, and then understand how you can move through the process, not without resistance, because I don't think that's possible. Friction is sort of part of bringing something from idea into form, but with a lot less resistance than the ways that we've learned to think of it, perhaps. One good example, I think, is the narrative around fear.
Say more
and
about
how
that.
We're often encouraged to, overcome our fear, push through the fear, win over our fear, all that kind of almost like warlike language. Very, I suppose, masculine in your language, in the sense that it's focusing on like willpower and an idea that we overcome those weaker parts of ourselves, and then we can sort of charge forward, which is not my experience at all. I don't think that's true in any way. Fear, when we fight our fear, we're not really fighting our fear. We're fighting frightened parts of ourselves. We're fighting ourselves. And that's never a good idea. So what I teach is a different perspective on it. What is this fear about? Is it about, in this culture of just do it, take the leap, do the thing, all in, go big. Maybe that message isn't really where we start. Maybe if you try to take the leap from scratch, you're going to freeze up with fear. And some aspect of you is going to dig her heels in and refuse to move forward. And all the work that you try to do from that place is going to be so heavy. It's going to be so slow and so cumbersome. It's going to be so much striving and struggle in that process. Whereas if you actually listen to that fear, okay, some part of me is frightened here. My nervous system is activated. What's this about? And then, okay, I'm moving a bit too fast here. Okay, what do I need to feel safe enough to move forward from this point? That's a really important question. What do I need to feel safe enough to move forward? Okay, so I need a slower pace perhaps, or I need smaller steps. I don't want that big leap. I want one small step after the other so that I can sort of move forward and feel safe all the way. Okay, let's do that. We can do that. And then we move forward like that instead, sort of move along at a pace that is doable and possible to handle, even for the frightened parts of us. And so that all of us are moving forward, so that we're not sort of fighting ourselves along the way. And it might look at a first glance as if we're going to reach the goal. It's going to take us so much longer, to reach the goal. But my experience is that it's the absolute opposite. When we sort of take those big leaps and we activate all that fear response in ourselves, and then we back away all the way back, because that fear is unmanageable. And then we have to start from scratch again. And it's sort of a back and forward motion. Whereas if we take that slower route or that kinder route, we're going to get there one step after the other. Might not look as, cool and dramatic, but it's going to do the job. We're going to get the book written instead of curling up in a ball because we're too frightened to move forward.
Oh, I love what you're saying, and I want to keep building on it, but I want to underline a couple things that I'm getting as you're talking. Because first of all, I just love doing podcasts because I always feel like just the perfect guest shows up in my life for me, right? It's like, oh, it's not random and nothing is, right? But you're, because first of all, I am just at the beginning of embarking on writing a book. So there's just that exact thing happening. And just what you're saying, right? I do have a lot of fear because, it's such a big project. I mean, I wrote a dissertation. It's a very different process. I'm very aware of that. But first of all, I want to go back and underline, because I've felt this way before, but the way you're articulating it has a lot of meaning for me around, and I've been trying to shift my language that has more of a masculine tone to it, like conquer your fear and overcome your fear and push through it. And at times that's useful language, but as you were talking, I'm thinking, no, for me, it's more about embrace my fear, right? And fold it, friend it, get in relationship with it, because it has a lot to tell me. There's wisdom in my fear. It isn't something. And, when I work with people and we work on our emotions, and when I tell them there's 5 main emotions: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy, most people are like, why is there only one good one? But that's what we're talking about, right? They all have value. They're all important. Yeah. So there's that piece. And then there's this kind of grandiose or dramatic way we think we're supposed to do something, heroic, but it is one step at a time. And it is, I've had to learn to break things into pieces and but then celebrate. And, I think a way to embrace my fear is, I'm with it. And then when I do accomplish a step, that the only win isn't when that book is written and published. And, when do you celebrate, right? No, you have to celebrate each and every one of those steps. And I think that is something you're reminding me of. I know you didn't use those words exactly, but I think that's a way of embracing our fear and befriending it as well. It's like, yep, we're in this together. And thank you for pointing out like places that, I might need to look closer or, just be with, to this sense of being with ourselves and being with our feelings. Getting that that's part of the process that you're talking about. And what's funny is because you called Creative Doer, but that's where I think how I hear that or interpret that is like creative with the doing. Like I will also often say that, and I'm, using this framework of masculine, feminine qualities or values, principles. But as a woman, I have found that I just feel better and it feels more right to me to use the masculine in service of the feminine. I've just, that it has its place, but not as the dominant place in my life. Right. It's, I need a system, I need some structures, and those are very helpful. In this process, in this birthing, this birthing process that I'm embarking on of a book, but of anything that we're embarking on. So those were just a few of the many thoughts that you're igniting for me. So thank you for that. And I want to kind of go into that a little bit around, and you could speak to this personally, maybe first, but how have you seen, or when you said, after your move, you had your second child, and, how can our creative powers heal and help our mothering journey? And I totally agree with you that our mothering journey is our kids, but it's also everything that we're birthing and creating in our lives. So
yes,
if you could say more about that.
Yes, it's absolutely more than the act of being a mother biologically. I think of it in terms of like those archetypes, those archetypal transitions that we move through, maiden, mother, and crone. I know you touched on that before.
Yeah.
I think that is a super helpful way of looking at the journey of a woman's life, and how so many of us, particularly in the West, are stuck in an eternal maiden, because that's what's encouraged. We're supposed to be forever young, forever pretty, forever pleasing, and preferably harmless, and appealing in every way. And that's what we are taught to strive for. And we continue to strive for it even as we have passed that phase in our lives. And it takes on sometimes ridiculous forms and tragic forms as well. Mm-hmm. And it leaves us with like generations of women who never really fully grow up, never really fully grow into their power, because the transition into mother is one such transition where you step into a new level of capacity of caretaking, of mothering, not just your own children, but the world and the work that you're supposed to birth here. And then the next step into crone, which is a very long process. Like I'm 44 now, and I've just entered perimenopause, which is a process that could last up to 10 years sometimes. So I'm sort of transitioning. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm transitioning out of mothering into that phase beyond mothering. And I'm feeling like this, my personal experience is that my power is only increasing. My creative power, which we are, like we're sort of taught to think that a woman sort of peaks when she gives birth to children, and then she's not really, we don't have a place for her anymore. She's not really, she's superfluous to our society, which is absurd.
It's so absurd.
Because
I know.
We come into our power, and I notice this so much in relation to our creative work, that something happens when we step into mother for sure, but then something more happens when we step into the next transition, where we sort of run out of fucks to give, and we don't necessarily have little children that claim our time and our space anymore. So we actually do have more space to create. I don't know if we can still run off to that cottage, for 6 months, but there is more space, and we have a possibility there to start channeling that increasing power. If we learn how to wield it, we can channel it into new work that has like a whole new level of impact. And that work is like, that's all but gone from our world today, especially the culture that we live in.
Yeah.
We almost don't have any female elders anymore. A few,
No,
and they are like shining like beacons, but they are so few.
Yeah.
And most of us live without, and we don't transition into it ourselves either. But that's where the magic happens, as I see it. I mean, we can create so much beauty, even in maiden and in mother, for sure. But then, oh my God, the things that are unleashed when we grow older. Oh, I'm just starting to explore that.
Oh, it's exciting. And I know you mentioned before we were live that you listened to my podcast on menopause, because I'm so grateful to have raised my awareness, or that I have people around me that could show me the possibility that it doesn't have to be how our culture is. And there, as you said, there aren't many models out there, but that's why I'm so grateful for the work you're doing, and the importance of any way and anyone we can touch to say, okay, well, you can follow that way, that old way that doesn't work, and hide yourself away or think you're of no use anymore. Or, you can really step into this power that has been building, right? Like, I think what you were mentioning was, yes, there's beautiful things, of course, in the maiden phase and then the mother phase, but toward what end, right? And I come across that a lot in women I coach, that when their children are grown and whatnot, like, well, what am I supposed to do now? Like, who am I? And just really, I mean, I love it that any of them start asking that question, but so many just think they're, I don't know, retire, hang out, or just hide away because they're not as beautiful or, as whatnot. So shifting this is, I think, what our planet needs. What we all need is to bring this, elder wisdom and power to the forefront. Do you have any suggestions, for women, or, I don't want to turn this all into a how-to, but, a couple suggestions that we can offer our audience and share with the listeners on, their creative journey and fulfilling their creative dreams wherever they're at, wherever they're listening from.
Yes. The first advice is always that there is work to do right now, and that we do not need to wait for better circumstances or longer stretches of time or more money or whatever. That there is a way to heed, if you have that call. And I'm guessing that most of the people who listen to your podcast and follow your work, they do have that longing inside. They feel that call to do a work that is theirs and theirs only to do. And they have some expression to share with the rest of us. And if that is there, then you can answer it right away. There is no need for waiting any longer. Like, you can start right now. We do not need to compare ourselves to any idea of the creative journey that requires you to step outside of your current life. We look at your life right now and we find those 5 minutes or 15 minutes and we start there. And then you sort of kindle that fire, and you don't need to build it into a bonfire right away. It can just be this tiny little fire in your heart, and you come back to it and you put on some more firewood regularly so that it doesn't die out. And you can keep that fire going. And from that energy, like, you can build things, big things, even from those limited resources. We can build big things. And it's really only a matter of, first of all, recognizing that I can start right now. And second of all, understanding what this process is like, creating something, moving something from idea to form. Like I said in the very beginning, it follows a certain structure. It follows a certain flow through certain steps. And understanding and learning about that process will help immensely, because then when you come to that phase where you think everything you've done is crap and you might as well give up, then you'll know that that is a phase. In fact, it's not truth. It is not a sign that you should give up or stop or anything like that. But so learn about it, learn about the process. And then the third and perhaps most important thing is find support in that process. Don't do this alone. We were never meant to do this alone. The whole individualistic self-made man thing, it's bullshit. We create in community. We draw from each other's strengths and from each other's idea and from each other's work, and we create magic from there. And it's not the soul race that we've been taught to think of it as, but it's getting the right support. And that doesn't have to be paid support. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It could be some like-minded friends, just a writer's circle, anything like that. But find the people who believe in you, of course, and believe in themselves, and believe that this is necessary and important to do, that this is worthwhile, even though it steals some time away from, the rest of your life. It's worthwhile. And stick with it, because we will always doubt ourselves. We will always come to that place when it feels like it's too heavy or too difficult or too scary or whatever. And it's then we need, to be able to call on the support of others to get us through those tricky patches. So
wonderful. I'm listening personally to what you're outlining. I think it's very powerful and profound, and particularly that we don't have to do it alone, right? We'll raise our awareness, but also what I'm hearing and need to hear today is start now. And, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 15 minutes, but, turning my attention toward that piece of creativity in my day. And I think that is, so beautiful and feminine. I don't always need blocks of time. I can carve out blocks of time, and do that too. That's important, but I can't wait for the perfect circumstance, but I can create these moments, and really value them. And for me, also underlining, and it's a nice kind of way to look at mothering ourselves, and that's a big piece of what I, want to support women is in their mothering, that it's also, what aspect of it is tending to ourselves and mothering ourselves. And I think you're outlining that really beautifully too. Well, I'm sure there are going to be people who want to hear more and know more about you. Where can my listeners find you online?
The first place is my website, which is simply annalovind.com. And there you'll find lots of writing on this topic. You'll find the book. It's available as an ebook on my site, but you can also get it as a print book via Amazon or whatever your online bookseller is. And
Great.
There are also plenty of free resources on that page that you can seek out and use as a help to get started. If you're in that place of sort of not really getting into the doing. And then also I am intermittently on Instagram. That is my social media of choice. So you can find me there under my name, and I'll be happy to say hi to you.
Well, that sounds great. And you have, beautiful things in both places. So I have one last question. This I ask all my guests at the end of the show. What does rewrite the mother code mean to you? It's actually two questions in one. So what does rewrite the mother code mean to you? And what's one way you're going to mother yourself either today or this week sometime?
Rewrite the mother code. I love that language. I think to me, it involves all the things that we've been talking about today, but particularly broadening the idea of what mothering is and what birthing and caretaking can be. In terms of creative work, which is my area, that it can be birthing our work, birthing our voices and our stories, and that particular thing that only we can express. I think that is, for me, the most important aspect. Yeah, rewriting it. That's good.
Yeah.
Rewriting it, shifting our perspective on what that means. Oh, and today
or
I
this
think
week?
no, today actually, because I find I get like the deepest sense of nourishment and mothering from when I am in nature and in the wild. And I'm lucky in that regard that I live just on the threshold of some vast wild nature. And I'm gonna actually, it's the full moon now when we are recording this. So I'm gonna go out in the forest this evening when it's really dark, except that it's snow on the ground and it's a full moon in the air, and that creates a very magical, particular kind of light. So I'm going to be out there walking in nature and just reveling in the moon and the earth. And to me, that feels like being mothered.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. I felt like I just was transported there with you. And as I'm looking at the moon, well, we won't be looking at the same time because you'll be looking at it. But either way, we're looking at the same moon. And I love that way of when I think about, and I do that at every full moon, as I imagine women all over the world, honoring and being with the moon in whatever way, is nourishing for them, but that we're all part of that and all connected. And I'm super grateful to have this time to connect with you today, Anna, and everything that you were, we birthed a conversation, so to speak. And it's been very nourishing for me. So anything I do beyond this and mothering myself today is going to be a bonus because I love when my work is mothering, and I love the way you're working and articulating, and thank you so much. And I can't wait to see what more, you bring forth in your sphere and in the world.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a deeply nourishing conversation.
Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to subscribe to Mother. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women, well, actually everybody, men included. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com. I'll see you next time.